The big question, what are resources? People will say resources are the things they need to actualize the dreams they want to have or they already do have. Some people will say resources are substances you need to put into something to get reality. And some people will tell you resources can be whatever it is that you spend, right? Money, it could be time, it could be substance of value. People will tell you all sorts as resources. But for the course of our model, we will be looking strictly into money, into people, into time, and substance of value. These are the types of resources that are very, very important for the work we do. And this is because for every time you have an idea in your head, for every time you have a project to actualize, you need these four major things for you to be able to actualize this project. Money. We all know money is an exchange of value, is a store of value rather, and money is used to buy anything we want to buy in the market, right? But look at yourself as a social entrepreneur. What are the things you need money for? You need money to be able to buy. You might need to buy supplies. You might need to get. You might need to pay honorariums. You might need to get venues for your programs, mobilization of people, and all, just to mention a few of them. And people, I say it all the time. When you don't have people that believe in what you're trying to do, then it sets you on the back foot, because you would find it hard to get people to help with your project or also help with your goals that you have set aside for that particular project that you're trying to do. Time. Time is of value, and we all understand that for everything we want to do, we have to make conscious and make do of time. Because if we don't do that, then we'll have a challenge. And the challenge will simply mean that it's going to be impossible for us to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve on time. Every time when we talk about project management, every time when we talk about resources management, monitoring and evaluation, you will see that time is always a thing that is constant while we're discussing all of that. We talk about smart purposes. You say the T out of the smart is the time, right? And very much later into this module, we will talk about how important timing is in every project we want to do, and how it also stands as a resource for you as a listener. Then substance of value. You can't buy everything. By the time you set out to buy everything you need to achieve your goals, you're going to end up broke. Not just broke, you're going to end up exhausted. So it's important for you to be able to lay your hands on substance of value, which you don't necessarily need to pay for. And very much later into this module, we would also talk about how you can mobilize this substance of value. Because at the end of the day, right, you need to understand that substance of value come in different forms. And for every project you intend to do, substance of value is going to present itself in different ways. And I'll give you an example. For example, we want to have a town hall meeting. For us, in that case, the hall we want to use, the venue we want to make use of, can be a substance of value, and that substance of value does not necessarily need to be paid for. If we find a way around, perpetuating ourselves into this project, getting people who are very much interested in what we're trying to do, and making sure that we explain to everyone, what we are trying to achieve. One of the good books said, write the vision down so that everybody that sees it can run with it. So substance of value presents itself in different ways. Now, all of these I've mentioned answer the big question of what are resources, right? So going forward, we will be explaining the types of mobilization you need to do to actually get these resources. Now, you would agree with me that every of the things I've mentioned earlier on as resources will not just walk up to us. There's an hard work that needs to be done for us to actually get these things ready and useful for the projects we have at hand. And don't forget, as a project manager, as a program manager, as a project initiator, we need to understand that all of these resources that we have mentioned at a point in time needs to be gathered for us to be able to get the result that we have pictured in our mind. Now, resource mobilization just simply means the activities you do to be able to gather these resources together for your project. Now, using our case scenario, a town hall meeting, you would agree with me that we need a venue, we need people to come, we need volunteers, we need speakers, we need to be able to also understand the environment we want to have this town hall meeting. And you also need to ask yourself, what does this town hall meeting intend to achieve? All of these things are the things we need as resources for us to achieve the town hall meeting. Now, how do we get the resources for this town hall meeting to be a success? That activity that we do from point A to point B is mobilizing resources for the town hall meeting. Before you start, you have a plan. Your plan is very important. And accompanying your plan has to be a budget. Now, the budget makes you understand how much exactly you need to actually achieve all you need to do for the town hall meeting. And you also agree with me that while you're planning all of that, you put a price to everything. But the idea of this conversation is for you to understand that while you have put a price to everything, you cannot, set out to spend money on everything that you need to achieve on your town hall meeting. And as a social entrepreneur, or as a civic tech, leader, or as a community mobilizer, you need to understand that sometimes to get these funds might be difficult. Like we said, resources are scarce. A lot of people have made plans for their resources, how they intend to spend their resources, but it might take some convincing to do to get them to actually support the project that you want to do, right? So, and the project we have at hand right now is the town hall meeting. Now, while we've talked about all the resources we need, we are also trying to make sure that in achieving our town hall meeting, we divide these resources accordingly, right? We have material resources, we have human resources, we have cultural resources, we have financial resources, and we also have people resources that we need, which is part of the human resources, as I've mentioned. Now, what we have divided it into 5 dimensions, which is basically human resources, material resources, social organizational resources, and resources that has to do with culture. Because this is what we're trying to do, and we're trying to work in line with getting everybody who watches this module the resources they need for a particular project, right? And focusing on the town hall meeting, like I've said, we are able to divide these resources via our budget. Don't forget that I said for every project you have, you need a plan. The plan is the first thing you need to come up with while you're thinking of a project. And while you're thinking of that plan, is followed by a budget, right? And in this budget, we have a list of things we need to achieve. You need ushers, you need servers, you need caterers, you need speakers, you need venue, you need funding for projecting to people to come for your town hall meeting. So all of these things are going to take resources. But like I said, we do not necessarily need to pay for all these resources. Now, when you have done planning your budget, you now look at your budget. How do I divide these things under the 5 dimensions of resources that we have talked about? Number 1, you look at the all aspect. where does it fall under? You look at all the aspects of your budget. You look at how they can be categorized. You look at where they fall under, and you also look at how you can actually achieve those things without paying first. Like I said, don't forget, you can't pay for everything, because if you intend to pay for everything, you are going to go broke and frustrated. But if you are a good resource mobilizer, you are able to get some of these things, for people to buy into what you're trying to do. And for example, if you want to go into a community for a town hall meeting, say we're trying to get youth to get their permanent voters card, your community entry needs to be the head of the community. And that's number one, cultural resources. Now, when you go into the community, you don't just go into the community and say you want to have a town hall meeting. You are able to speak to the people who are in charge of this community. We call them community gatekeepers, right? They tell you what is achievable and what is not achievable, because you also want to understand that at the end of the day, all the resources that you have mobilized, you do not want them to go to waste. So, and you have to be able to leverage. Now, when we've talked about getting our town hall meetings up and running and going to the community leaders, you can also leverage the community leaders to give you a venue. Because don't forget that, like I've said, in your budget, you have broken down all the things that needs to be done into different class of resources. And this class of resources helps you to understand, who do I speak to? Who do I need to approach? Do I need to approach an organization? Do I need to approach an individual? Do I need to approach family and friends for them to gather resources that I need to achieve this particular project? Another categorization of resource you need to be very much aware of is people, human resources. When we're talking about types of resources, we said time, we said money, we said people, and we said substance of value. And we are going to categorize people under human resources, because we need people in every time or everything we have a project in mind. While you can't pay for everyone, you can't pay for everyone's time, you can't pay for everyone's contribution into the project. That's why you need volunteers. Volunteers are very important. And this set of people help you carry your goal on their heart. Because at the end of the day, while you are able to mobilize these people, they also need to be able to move to get one or two things done. And that's how you are able to gather people. And it's under human resources. Now, another category out of the time, money, people that we've talked about is social, organizational resources. Now, you need to understand that what you're trying to do is not new. The project you're trying to achieve is not new. And even if it is new, even if it is maverick, you need to understand that you need some people on board for people to listen to you. And this is me talking about you being a community mobilizer. This is me talking about you being a social entrepreneur. And this is me talking about you being a civic tech leader. You need organizations, you need people, you need leaders who are in these organizations to also buy into what you're trying to do. And how is this done? They give their words, they invite people for your program, they put out what you're trying to do on their own platforms, right? And this helps you to put you on a pedestal where resources even locate you faster, right? For example, as a community mobilizer, you're trying to get people to get their permanent voters card, like I said. There's nothing wrong in you partnering with Tracker, when you partnering with CCUp, the GoVote, when you partnering with Budget to get them to come on board for the kind of advocacy you want to push, right? That gives you some level of legitimacy that people want to see even before they commit their resources into your hands. Now, the last one, which is information resources, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to get the right information, and that is part of substance of value. Like I said, substance of value comes in different forms, and if you don't have information about something, you can just be laboring. You can be going around in circles without having to achieve what you intend to achieve. So it's important to, when you go into the community, using our case study, you gather all the information you need. You gather all the resources you need, like we have classified, for you to be able to achieve your town hall meeting that you have set ahead of you. And moral resources, very important. We are in an environment where people try to classify everything under morals. And this is important because you also want your project to take off. You want to get a particular goal at the end of your project. So it's important to get influencers, people who speak in the line of what you're trying to do, people who can contribute their voice in what you're trying to do. And it's also going to give you a leverage of, I always say, publicity is everything, either good or bad. But you want to be in the good part of publicity, right? So it's important you get these partners who can help you push your message ahead. All of these classifications that we've just talked about helps you to understand how to classify your resources, helps you to understand how you are able to bundle resources together to achieve the goal you need to achieve. First, don't forget, have a plan. Second, have a budget. Third, classify everything in your budget under this classification of resources that we have defined. And lastly, that helps you to understand who you need to speak to get those resources on board. And all of this that we have talked about encapsulates resource mobilization. Planning, like I said earlier on, is important in everything we're doing. And as a project manager, as a social entrepreneur, as a civic tech leader, you need to be able to understand what you intend to achieve. And we all know, to fail to plan is to plan to fail. So in every organization we find ourselves, either leading the organization, either running the organization, or running a project in the organization, everything we need to do needs to come with a proper plan, right? And this is the only way we can reach our goals as individuals, as organizations, and as even members of a social group or a community, as a community mobilizer. So it's important to understand that for everything that we need to do in our organization, we need to plan. And for us, what does planning mean? For a community mobilizer, what does planning mean? For a social entrepreneur, what does planning mean? Planning also means budget. Planning also means understanding foundation grant, and planning for us, understanding challenge grant. All of these 5 things that I've put together will help us as a community mobilizer to get the resources that we need. Don't forget, when we started, we talked about resource mobilization. And when we are planning to get all these resources, these are the things we need to do to also help us get the results that we want faster and to be able to understand what we need to achieve. And talking about what we need to achieve, these are the things planning will help us to do. Planning will help us to create competitive advantages. Planning will help us manage risk and uncertainty. Planning will help us to build our team and cooperation. Planning will also help you for effective use of resources. And planning will help you establish your organizational goals. Right? Because at the end of the day, you would agree with me that for us to achieve all of these things, it might be a lot of things moving around. It might be a lot of things, trying to catch our attention at the same time. But when there is a plan for everything, then we are able to follow the plan through, and we are able to get across the message we want to get across for our experiment. And also we are able to understand how we build trust at the end of the day. Because let me also inform you that the kind of planning process that you have goes into the next thing we're going to talk about.